good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sisters, let's go down, let's go down, come on down. Oh, sisters, let's go down in the river to pray.
I called the talk this morning Back to the Future. And some of you have seen the science fiction movie, and that's not what I'm going to talk about, although it is a good movie and I would encourage you to see it. What I want to talk to you about using the image Back to the Future is that memory is like a deep root. It grows down into the past. And what memory does, it takes nutrients from the past and brings them up into the trunk and the branches of our life so that we may bear fruit. Memory is our strength if we remember. But we live in a world where forgetting seems to be more prominent than remembering, and that's because we have stopped using our brains and we have started using machines. There are many times when I want to think of something and I don't find it in my mind, so I pull up my little Google machine, and the little Google machine helps me. Now, I'm an older person, and I'm going through the changes of aging, and I'm wondering, what will the future look like if people no longer have a memory? And one of my suggestions is that such people will be liable or open to control by others. Now, I want you to remember a little episode from my life. You've heard me talk before about my work as a home care attendant, bathing, cleaning, cooking for elderly gentlemen. And working with these elderly gentlemen, I, of course, heard many stories. And those stories were often loaded with a form of anxiety. These elderly gentlemen would look back on the way life used to be. They were looking at where life was now, and they were worried about where life might be in the times to come. I had one gentleman who I especially learned some life lessons from. He had been a professor of Old Testament theology at the University of Winnipeg. He had retired, and then he had developed a cancer in his brain. It was called a star cancer. It started from the center, and it began spreading out into all areas of his brain. And this brilliant man who knew 7 languages, this brilliant man gradually began to decline and diminish. And in the year that I took care of him, there was very little left of his memory. One day, I asked him a question, and it had to be a question that would permit only a short answer because his brain wasn't working well. So I said to him, "Charles, if you had to preach a sermon today, what would you call it?" And he did not hesitate. Right from his heart, he said, "I would call it the goodness of God." And that was a remarkable thing for me, to think of a person who had been laying in a bed for a year with a cancer that was taking away every one of his resources. He was being diminished to the point of non-existence. And he died shortly after I left him. But what I was astonished by was that he would affirm the goodness of God even in the middle of all his life's circumstance that was so dark. And that led me to thinking about the 2 people in the temple who greeted the baby Jesus. These were elders. These 2 persons had seen the experience of their people in decline. They had seen the influence of Rome on Jerusalem. They had seen how the economy was changing from an economy of care for one another to an economy of taking advantage of one another. And these two old persons were in the temple on the day that Mary and Joseph brought their baby Jesus. And the old fella took the baby and he said, this is hope for the future. This is the new life for which I have been longing. Now I can go to sleep in peace. And the elderly lady said basically the same thing. This child is a symbol, a sign of a future that will be good for the earth and its peoples. These two elderly people saw in the birth of a child hope for the future. Now we know that this child is Jesus, and we know that the Christian tradition has developed a lot of stories about this child Jesus. But sometimes those stories mislead us. Because my insight specific to the blessing of those two old people was that they saw in the child the future. And not only in this child, but in that whole generation which was to rise up along with this child, a change would come into the world. Now Jesus, in the book of Hebrews, is described for us by the author. The story tells about a baby that was born. Luke's story tells about the baby, but the Hebrew story tells about this baby having grown up and going about doing an important piece of work. And that important piece of work was to face death, to look death in the eye and say, I am not afraid of you. And that meant something. Because in the days of Rome and Jerusalem, the powers were using death to intimidate and frighten the population. If you stepped out of line, you would get nailed to a cross. And we know Jesus was crucified. But not only Jesus. Hundreds of people were crucified. And they were crucified because they rose up in resistance to the power that was exploiting and oppressing the people and the land. So what we have is two elderly persons looking to the future and seeing in this baby the sign of hope. And I am trusting that we too will not look at our diminishing lives, but look at the lives that are now coming into the world and see these young persons, boys and girls, see these young human beings as a sign of hope. And not only passively, just to say, oh, good, kids are being born, there's hope. But to say, I am going to do everything in my power to make this world the kind of place where these children can be raised up in health and happiness. Jesus is killed because he contradicts what the leaders of the world are saying matters. He contradicts what they say is important, and he makes known that there's only one thing in life that is important. That is to be open to the love of God, to love God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus was the one who taught the human race that love is the way forward in hope. Love, care, and compassion. Now, the psalm is a song of praise, and it recognizes that there is something not quite right with the world, but it also recognizes that God is available to each human being. The psalmist lifts up his voice to acknowledge the presence of God in his life. And that presence of God gives hope. That presence of God gives the future a shape, a definition. And so we, like the psalmist, are encouraged to trust that God dwells at the very center of our being. God is the one who formed us in the womb. God is the one who led us all the way to where we are now. And God is the one who will lead us forward into the future. And the psalm makes it clear that if we as people trust in God, we will not be ashamed. We will not be disappointed. We will not be let down. God is reliable. God is trustworthy. The question then becomes, how do I know God? And the answer is, seek and you will find. Ask and you will be answered. Knock and the door will be opened to you. That is to say, the first effort of your life ought to be to make the connection with God, who is the source and the substance of our human being on earth. We live in a time where many people are asking what the future might hold. We, like the two elderly persons in the temple, wonder. And I am encouraging you to do all that you can to make a difference. We sing, go make a difference. Go make a difference in the world. Your relationship with God will shape you in such a way that your spirit will radiate positive energy. And that positive energy will be contagious, and people will catch it and be infected by it, and that positive energy will take root in their lives and begin to grow and to bear fruit. And that fruit is what makes us happy people. Joy, peace, and all the virtues of kindness and goodness. I am hoping that right now, in the earth, everywhere, more and more persons, one by one, are being changed by the Spirit of God, being motivated to enact the Spirit of God, and trusting that in giving themselves to the way of God, they will bring peace and justice into the world. May God